come from a big Navy family, big Navy tradition. My grandfathers both served, a bunch of uncles. My sister is in the Navy right now, and it was kind of a clear path for me to sort of continue that.
I come from a military family, so a lot of Army and Air Force, and no one in my family had really explored, ship life or joining the Navy.
So I did have an older sister that was one grade ahead of me. She went to West Point before me, and she was telling me like her experiences.
While I was in high school, I started getting recruited by the U.S. Military Academy at West Point.
Trying to figure out ways to, pay for school, but also to gain leadership experience and travel the world.
So I ended up going to the Naval Academy, graduating from there, and then I went into the Navy as a nuclear submarine officer.
I deployed to Afghanistan in 2013, where I led a base construction project. When I came back from the deployment, I tried out for Special Forces, where the job is to train, advise, and assist our allies.
So after West Point, I decided that I wanted to specialize in like a human resources type of job. This specific branch had 70% were female. I think I did put a limitation on myself that this must be the specialization that I should do, even though I might have been happier doing a different job.
As a woman joining the Navy, I did have some reservations and concerns coming into it because you hear so much on the news.
It might not be a lot of women in the military or at the academies, but it's the quality of women.
I was really lucky that most of the commands that I went to had a really good percentage of women, and so I was able to kind of build a community of women wherever I went.
Having to carry like 50 or 60 pounds on my back on day one and just seeing like bigger men who were like football players or whatever carrying the same load, I just felt that it was like a little intimidating, and I really had to like lean on like the other women that were there.
I actually found myself more feeling the complexity of being a woman in the military with civilians. I would travel for work at the airport and I would not be in uniform sometimes. The staff calls up, active duty military to check in. All the men would go in front of me and they would never get asked for their military ID. And every time, as soon as I went through, they stopped me and said, "Oh, we need to see your military ID."
If I wear like an Army type of shirt or a West Point type of shirt, I often get asked, "Oh, did your husband serve in the military? Did your spouse or boyfriend?" And I've also gotten comments like, "You're too pretty to be in the military," or like your voice is a little too high pitched, or like you're too bubbly.
There is a pressure that women have to outperform the men in order to get recognized. Women felt like they had to go above and beyond in order to get recognized and almost prove to the military community that they deserve to be there.
I just got married last year, so my wife and I decided that we wanted to transition to the next phase of life, and that military lifestyle wasn't necessarily ideal for starting a family. The fact is, military service puts a lot of stress on families. A lot of my teammates had children. Their dad or their mom is gone all the time. That's really hard.
I missed a lot. I missed the Cubs win the World Series, missed the presidential election, missed a lot of important family events, and lost some pretty close relationships just because I wasn't there.
I only had about 2 weeks in between, leaving my naval career behind, closing that chapter, and coming to Kellogg and beginning a new chapter.
My first day, I was very late, and I showed up probably 10 minutes before the class even started, and the only people in the classroom were the 3 other veterans.
Professor Pierce looked at me like I was crazy when I logged into Zoom, and I was the only one on there for about 5 minutes, and then Justin Allen, one of the other veterans in our class, logged in too.
Getting out, I thought a lot of it would be about people maybe not being accepting of me, or people tagging me as the typical vet, some salty person who's angry or has a lot of issues. And come to find out, a lot of people just want to hear your story because it's interesting. And for me, that was a really uplifting part of my transition process. I entered business school a little bit selfishly, wanting to sort of keep my sort of veteran perspective and a lot of the stories and things like that to myself.
What surprised me was that so many Kellogg students had never met anyone in the military, and so they just are so curious to hear, about our stories and our experiences.
I found myself sort of drawing away from a lot of those conversations just because I was afraid of being pinged as, that's Kevin, that's the bubblehead who's lived underwater.
For me, like coming to Kellogg, I definitely had imposter syndrome. I was extremely intimidated by my classmates that were working in investment banking or consulting.
The KBA has been, just such a great community.
I think it's this safe space where we come together, we're able to reflect on our time and use each other's experiences to grow further into the business world.
All of us at one point or another put on the uniform and served our country.
We have members from all branches, from the U.S. side, but also internationally.
If you see the KVA running around, we're normally a little bit louder maybe than the rest of the other clubs, and we're also probably a little bit older as well, and sort of have that home away from home and home away from what was, my life for the past, at this point, 10, 11 years.
I was leading a disaster relief preparedness mission in Southeast Asia, and some of the military counterparts that were part of certain countries weren't, I would say, thrilled to be working with a military female leader. I had one U.S. Counterpart that was local, attached to the embassy, that went out of his way to make sure that everyone in the room that we worked with that were local knew that I was in charge, and he made sure to put me at the head of the table when we would have meetings.
If there was a group of men and they were like criticizing some women in my organization, a lot of times I just kept my mouth closed because I felt that I was invited to this table. I got their trust and that they could talk this way about other women, that like, oh, I must be doing something right if they view me as like one of the guys. I think that is so wrong, and it's hard for a woman in these type of organizations to be upset that men have these stereotypes when there's women that don't correct them. Definitely here at Kellogg, reflecting on how important it is to stand up for other women and to, if they are struggling, like building them up, because at the end of the day, like we're all together and we need to have like more of a powerful force.
I think that there is a bit of a hesitancy for some people to engage with military members, just because the fact is, like, most Americans, most people around the world don't have friends or family that serve in the military. I would encourage you to seek out at least one of the military veterans in the Kellogg community to engage in an honest and open conversation, and just to get to know a bit about them and then share your experience. Because for all of us, we're transitioning from this military life into the business world, and we have a lot that we can learn from you. And at the same time, I know that we have a lot that we can offer in exchange.
There's a lot of questions a lot of times from like prospective admits and prospective veterans of, what I should be doing to prepare to come to business school, whether it be opening a case book, read an accounting manual, something like that. The biggest thing and advice that I would give is reflect on your story and sort of what made you into the person that you are.
You have these different type of experiences than most of your classmates, and that is such a strength.
Being a veteran gives you some pretty interesting stories in the first place, but also insightful stories, ones that there's a lot of value to take from.
You'll be embraced and your perspective will be appreciated.
I would urge sort of a younger self to be more comfortable with sharing your story. You can't introduce yourself as being Kevin and I'm a veteran, and not just being Kevin, the guy who doesn't really want to talk about his experience too much.